Welcome to the Intentional Guy podcast, where we are driven to help men become more intentional and purposeful in their daily lives. Your host, Michael Chestnut, will interview amazing guests to get insight and glean wisdom from, so we can integrate intentional living and lead happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. All right, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Michael Chestnut, and I want to thank you for being back with us on Intentional Guy podcast. Today, I have a guest here. I can say his first name, but I'm not even going to try, Alan, to say your last name. But I have Alan here today with us, and we got some topics I just really kind of am excited to talk about, because on Intentional Guy, we're always looking for things that just make us better at what we are. But sometimes to look at what makes us better, we got to look at what makes us not better too, and identifying areas that need improvement and things like that. But Alan, if you don't mind, can you just tell us a little bit about you, so my audience has a clue to who they're talking with today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me on the show today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, so my name is Alain Dumonceaux. I don't blame you for shying away from that last part, but I'm the Purposeful Action mentor for the Awakened Man movement. And I started doing men's work a few years back when I came across a couple incidents, challenges in my life that I really needed guidance and help with. And one was I almost lost my second marriage. And when that incident came upon me, I really struggled with trying to find a place where I could go and share the things that I was going through, try to get an understanding of how it is that my life had got to this point. And when I recognized that there wasn't much place there, I didn't really put two and two together just yet. But soon after that, my father-in-law passed away. And when he passed away, he was like my best friend, truly was, the son he never had. And when I found him in his home, my heart just left. And again, I found myself in two real short time frames of being in a place where I just had nowhere to go. Yes, there's things like counseling, and you can go do grief work and other types of work. But for men, we're very nervous and shy about really bearing our souls. Right. So I decided to create space where men have an opportunity to come to talk about the things that they're facing in life, whatever season of life that they're in, and to help them, guide them through to that next phase. Because I think we all are on this planet to live some form of a purpose. We may struggle to figure out what that is. And the only way we can do that is being around other men to help really work through some of the challenges. And I'm sure we're going to get into some of that conversation, but that's a brief, synopsis of how I got to where I am today and the work that I'm doing.
I love that, because I'm a strong believer that we have I call it the inner circle of five. I have 5 good friends that I always am looking at, that that share the same values, goals, other things like that. We may not all be perfect, but we're one in the head in that same direction. And I'm really strong on that iron sharpens iron, right? Yeah. And without those men that I have in my life right now, I would be floundering, because there's just that safety in that. And I commend you for that. I want to hear a little bit more about that. Is that like an online group? Is that something you do in your area?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is an online group. I'm working out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And so I started the program. Really, I had a group of 10 guys get together just pre-COVID. And I had this idea of wanting to get guys together. And we started working on meeting on a weekly basis. And one of the things that what started to evolve out of that was helping guys craft a mission statement, similar that you would do in business. And so we looked at things like our values, our core values, limiting beliefs, the way that we start to sabotage ourselves. And then slowly but surely, we started to work towards getting to a point of being able to craft a mission statement, something that we could really embody who we are. And then when COVID hit, I had to pivot this thing to go online. And so we've been online since 2020. And our group program is called the Band of Brothers. It's a group mentoring program. It's an opportunity, and we meet twice a month. And this year, we're talking all about everyone's hero's journey. And so over the last 3 years, we've been building lesson plans and in modules for guys. So there's opportunity for them to dive into deeper work if they'd like to. But now this group is really transforming into, what is your mission for this year, this next 12 months? What is it that you aspire to become? How will you live differently than you've done in the last 12 months? And so we're seeing great motivation now from guys, because it's much more active in our meetings versus being passive. And they're really enjoying the idea of being able to share even more deeply about what it is that they're going after and how we can support each other on that path.
Well, I love that. I mean, you don't even have a clue how close me and your thoughts are on this stuff. I actually started a men's online group for my church right now. That's going to be starting next month. And we're doing the same thing. I wrote a book, More Than a Picture, and God had a workbook that came with it. It's all about building character, but finding that focus, because I think, we just take it for granted, but a lot of us, we're very successful in our business life, right? We put that in there. And if you ask a lot of guys, what do you, who are you? Tell me about you. And a lot of times it will go directly to that job, right? And that's where our identity lies. But, the most important part of my life is my family, my kids, my wife, my church, the people I worship with, and my close friends. Right. And several years ago, I was one of those guys who sabotaged his life. And it took me 15 years to find restoration in my life. And I love what you're doing. I wish I would have been able to have found something like that back then, because probably would have saved myself a lot of heartache. But, it was the road God took me down to get to here. But do you find a lot of guys who are, I think one of the problem is there's something that I'm interested in, the imposter syndrome that you talk about. I lied to myself for years, and was such a people pleaser. I'm not really sure where all that goes, but I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And what a great way to frame that is the imposter syndrome. Truly is about the lies that we tell ourselves. For me, the imposter syndrome started more than 30 years ago. I grew up, watching guys like Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet, and cooking shows like that. And so I had this desire to want to be a chef. And so I was fortunate enough through my career to be able to mentor underneath a gentleman who was competing in the Culinary Olympics. And so because I had done some work with them and I had worked real hard at my craft, I was fortunate enough to join the team in the late 80s and early 90s, and ultimately was able to compete in the World Culinary Olympics in 92. But through that whole journey, I just felt like such an imposter. The work and the effort and the struggle that it took me to make my show pieces for display that would be judged would take me countless hours. And it appeared that my mentor could just by fluke make things happen. And the stuff always looked spectacular. And that's when the imposter syndrome starts to come in, is because what's happening there, and the underlying part of that story is we start to compare ourselves. And if you ever notice when you're truly in the imposter syndrome and you're comparing yourself, do you ever rate yourself better than? Never. We're always much less than.
Yeah.
And so what ends up by happening is we start to get our ego wants to protect us. And so then it starts bringing forward all the times where we haven't been good enough. And it just keeps bombarding us with this. Well, you can't do that. Why would you want to do that? You can't compete. You think you're going to win a medal. You think all this work anything's going to happen. Well, still pushing forward. The challenge of it is, and while I won a couple of silver medals, the challenge of it is that it was very debilitating. It really crippled me in my career. And I didn't really understand that until losing that part of my life. At that point, I had been married to my high school sweetheart, and we'd had a couple of young kids, and it ultimately cost me my marriage and everything. I ended up by becoming divorced and spent about a year and a bit in a state of depression. And it's all because allowing this imposter syndrome to come through, to have this voice inside of me, that loud voice that was telling me just how I wasn't performing.
Yeah.
And it takes work. And so part of that is about being able to take an opportunity to do some inner work and diving in. And I hadn't been very faith-based at that time in my life. And it was a slow progression to come back to really taking opportunity to understand what was truly important. And it was truly important, and I recognized this years later, was that my kids didn't care what their dad was doing and whether he was living in a 500 square foot bachelor suite. They just cared that they wanted to spend time with dad. Yeah. It took so much, all that time had passed that it was tough to have it come back. So,
right. Well, I exactly, you gotta love electronics. They come on at the right time, right? But I love what you're saying because, I fell into that trap myself.
Yeah.
And that's what I call it a trap. It's the enemy loves to get our ear.
Yes.
And tell things. And then I end up, I'm trying to please the wrong people in my life, and that it really, falling into those traps can really destroy, like you said, a marriage and relationships and everything. And I think sometimes we sabotage these things on purpose because I know for me, I think I was trying to, it was just a matter of time, right?
Yeah.
So I might as well, let's just get this over with, and kind of ended up sabotaging things in my life, just because I think I deserved it. That's how I felt at the time, something like that. What are your thoughts on that with the men that you're working with?
Yeah, you brought up another great point there, and that's the idea of deserving. How we think we deserve punishment. We deserve because we're not good enough. So we feel that if if we're punishing ourselves, then we can become. Then that's the way through to glory. That's the way through to growth. And to me, while that is it has some validity in that, it's not the best way. It's truly a bitter way to experience life, right? Through that, I talk about it as, as how are we gaining wisdom? Well, you can gain it through experience. And sometimes that experience is excellent. And we do learn from it. But I find that the toughest ones, the most challenging experiences in our life is where we learn the most. And do we need to put ourselves in those positions? Probably not. But it's because we have this idea, or our ego has this idea of wanting to protect us. And when we can stop to recognize that there is something far greater than we are that is truly guiding us, and to stop listening to that one voice that's always so apparent in our mind, and just allow and to slow down a bit and allow for this other voice to be heard, this other piece to come through to us, then we have an opportunity to really work towards something that we want to become. And I always say that in our work, that I know when men are ready to change is when they're ready to take responsibility for where they are in life. And that can be a bitter pill. And I had to do that. Everything that we have, everything around us is based on our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And we can recognize that today is just is the epitome of what it is that I've done from yesterday and the days before. But if I would not thrilled with some part of my life, and we talked a little bit about how we identify with our work, and that was part of that story as well. The underside of that is that I was so focused on work that I ignored my family, I ignored friends, I ignored other parts. And so my whole life fell apart. So instead, take responsibility for where you are. And when you do that, then you can say, okay, now can I take responsibility for who I am? Well, it's not really who I am, but it's been how I've been trained. I've trained myself to think, to act, to believe. And is that really the truth? And that's where we get into the work. And that's why I think it's so important, to really uncover the self-sabotage, is really to understand and list our limiting beliefs. And we deal with it in what I call an integrity challenge. And so I ask guys to look at 6 different pillars in life. It's their financial, their emotional, physical, spiritual, professional, and relationships. And what are the beliefs that you have around all of those areas? And what we come to find is that some of those beliefs are no longer serving us, but we still hold on to them. And when we're holding on to them, it's really preventing us to have the best marriages that we can have, a true connection with God and spirit, to have financial abundance. And until we understand that that's what's limiting us, then we have a hard time breaking free from it. So we just stay on that hamster. We're like that hamster wheel, right? We're just working it. And then the last thing is that you take responsibility for who you aspire to become. And this will probably resonate well with your audience. And that's about being intentional. It's one thing as men, we love to set goals, right? Hey, we just came through, every beginning of every year, it's about, what are your yearly goals going to be? What is it that you want to do? Well, I want to lose 30 pounds this year. Great. We all know that by the time the end of January comes, most of those have fallen off, but it's because it's a goal. It's something that's in the future. But instead, if we set an intention, so one of the things I ask my guys to do is complete this sentence. I'm the kind of man who, and so what kind of man needs to show up to be in order to lose the 30 pounds? Like, how intentional is he going to be in choices for his diet, his exercise, his mindset? And when we start to be more intentional about our work and in what we're doing, then we start to see the rewards. And it can be challenging because it's easy for us to fall back and do what we've always done. But when we recognize that and have that built into who we are, then we can start to really move the needle forward and become whole and complete men that I know that exists.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's really important too, you said a key word, work. This is something that we have to work at. And there's, I'm a process guy. Okay. So I like the fact that you have all the 6 pillars to look at, because those are 6 areas of our lives that are crucial. Right. And we tend to focus, we get tunnel vision sometimes, I think, on one area, and we'll end up putting all our efforts into one, neglecting these other areas that are important. And eventually that's going to catch up to you. Right. Yeah. And I think a problem that I see with men is that the accountability, the friendships. Most men, if you ask them, hey, name to me 5 friends you hang out with, that, and especially married men, we don't know, and I'll get guys say, my wife's my best friend. And so, and which is great. My wife is my best friend too, and all that. But I want her to have friendships. This is how I look at it. I want her to have friendships, healthy friendships out of me and her, so that she has someone that she can confide in and talk to. Right. And then that's so important for me too. So my inner circle of guys that I have, we meet morning. A few of us, we meet morning on Zoom, and we pray for one another. And there's 4 of us on that call that on a regular basis that we know we challenge each other. Iron sharpens iron, right? Nice. And just to be vulnerable here, one of the hardest things I have in my whole life, which is the most important thing to me in my whole life, is my wife, right? My wife, she is precious to me. And the hardest thing that I have to do is to pray with her. And I want to do that. That is a desire I want, because when we do it, we become closer, but also because it's enduring to her. She wants that, right? Yes. But I struggle with it because the enemy has my ear in that. Who knows how vulnerable? My wife knows me better than everyone else. She thinks you're a fake. She thinks you're a fraud, which are none of the things that she's thinking, But those men, just taking that one area and being vulnerable with those men when we meet, every time I meet with them now, how is prayer with your wife going? How is that? And they're keeping me accountable, and they've helped me walk through process. Well, have you thought of ways that what's keeping it? And they've been great because I've been able to bounce these things off of it. But then what I found out, I had other guys in the group saying, man, I need to pray with my wife more, and then here we are on a journey together of the same things, and so that's why I like kind of what you're doing there, because I don't think God's called us to walk this world alone,
Agreed.
and we need other men, other things in our life to help us with the struggles that we have, because I think especially relationship wise, my job is cut and dry. I can see, I can measure success. There's all this, but relationships, I think men probably mostly struggle with that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I was just thinking that there's so many courses and training you can take on in business, right? Anything around business, but really what exists in relationship and relationships for men. And so that's why I think today the amount of men's work that's starting to rise and come up, guys such as yourself with your podcast, my podcast, lots of folks doing work, because it truly is about relationship. We were born of relationship. And so how is it that we cannot be in a relationship? And so, you talked a little bit about, being able to, pray with your wife and, and her being your best friend. That, I would say that's the same. It's true for me. And one of the things that I caution my guys when they first come to work with us is if you haven't shared anything with your wife, and you haven't really dived into that aspect of it, probably not the best idea to share the heaviest thing on your heart as the first thing out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're not used to doing that, used to sharing and putting ourselves out there, I get them to practice with things that are much smaller. Oh. And this is about really building intimacy and really having guys understand that our women want and need connection.
Yeah.
And they need it through conversation. They need it through being sharing. Men, we need connection as well, but we get it through being validated, being respected, being loved, more a lot of times that's the more of a physical aspect of it. And so when we struggle in our relationships because we're trying to connect to them the way we want to connect.
Yeah.
And we forget that in order for us to truly connect, that we need to really lean into what makes sense for them. And so I asked them to practice with things that are smaller, the little things that isn't going to end your marriage stuff. Yeah. And it can be whatever. It could be, having to, my wife's famous for just dropping clothes wherever, and just dropping things wherever. And it's like, I can't find my glasses. All right, hon, like you have 9 pairs. Let's go walk all the rooms. And sure enough, half of them are in different rooms because that's the last place she was having her coffee or what have you. And we chuckle at it. But then I can talk to her about, I feel frustrated with that. And the reason I feel frustrated with it is that at times I feel that my life is unorganized. And so when I see that, I feel that your life is unorganized, then I don't know how to support you in that. And it's all about me. It's not about what she's doing. It's really about me. Why am I frustrated? Because she's asking me where her glasses are for the 100th time. And it's because of things that I need to work on. Because really, does it matter? And right. So there are easier conversations to have. And then when we get into that, we can practice. And if you may want to just start that off by just saying, my wife's name is Kim. Kim, I just need to share something with you. I don't know how well it's going to come across. I'm truly doing this out of love. And so if you can honor me with just your presence and to hear what I have to say, that would be really great. And we've done this enough times that she knows now, yeah, that's great. I'll do that. And then I can just go and talk. And most times this doesn't come out great. Lots of, there's still work to be done there because she receives information differently than my guy friends would.
Yeah.
So I find that doing when you get together with a group of men, you can banter back and forth on some of these things and really be able to work through how it is that what's truly the topic that you're wanting to talk about,
Right.
what's your ultimate goal with it, when
Yeah.
to bring it up, and then you've worked through that, and now you can go and have that conversation with her.
Yeah.
And then as you build that trust, then you can have the deeper and more and the bigger topics for on the table. But I wouldn't start with the biggest one first,
Right.
because you're probably going to mess it up, and give yourself opportunity to learn and grow, have some small wins. And then
Yeah.
you can, and that's a bit of a reward to encourage you to go deeper with some of the things that are truly important in your relationship.
Well, I think, where the iron sharpens iron, men, sometimes you said it perfect. We're expecting them, we're expecting the things that attracted us to our wives to begin with to be different now. And sometimes those are the things that can annoy us. Right. And I've talked to guys, who have, they're like, we don't even have a sex life anymore. We don't have this and that. And you brought it up. It's a connection. And a lot of times I'll look at them and I'll be like, well, let's talk about your life. And then they're together. And the problem, there's not a connection. And like you said, women need that connection, that intimacy with so sometimes we think our problem is X, right? But it's really, there's not a connection. And so a lot of times one of the things that we'll do is encourage each other. When's the last time you took your wife out on a date?
Mm.
When's the last time you put your phone down and you talked about the things she wanted to talk about, and it's as simple as that. Because the truth is, sometimes we know the people we work with better than we know our wife.
Yeah.
And
that is such a great point, Michael. I was just thinking a couple thoughts there. The one about, my wife and I purposefully set up date night, because we found that we just weren't doing things together as a couple. We would do things together with a group of people, but I couldn't remember the last time that her and I just spent an evening or did something together. And I don't mean spending an evening in front of the TV watching something, right? I mean, doing something. So we made a conscious decision that on the second Friday of the month, that was my date night. On the fourth Friday of the month, that was her date night. And we left it up to each other to choose something to do. And the only rule was that the other one would participate and we just enjoy each other's time. Well, I got to tell you, we did that for most of last year from when we started it. And we got to do things like going out dancing and going and listen to a Shakespeare in the park play, like stuff that we would never have done. Right. Correct. So we looked for creative ways to go and do things that both of us would enjoy, but also get see me from a different perspective. Yeah. Instead of going to a game or something that is like, you can do that anytime. But what can you do differently? Because that's where you're going to see something totally new and different about her.
I love that.
You're outside of that environment. And then the point about talking about, knowing our coworkers and associates better than our wives, I think that a big part of that is because we feel safer to have conversations with them that we wouldn't necessarily have at home. And because there's more at stake. There's more at stake if I step out. That's why I went, going back to my earlier comment about being able to have conversations. Think about the types of conversations you have with those people and how safe you are to have a different scope of conversations. And what do you really have at home? Is it really just still focused on the superficial stuff? How was your day, dear? Was it good? Did you get that piece at work resolved? Did everything was everything all right with the kids? Those are all great questions, but really she wants connection. It's much deeper. Ask her how she felt about that. What happened that made her smile today? Things that challenge you and her to go deeper just the superficial question and answer that you'll do.
I find a lot of times, we become complacent in our marriage after a certain amount of time, and we used to once chase our wives. Now we don't, and that's where date night and other things like that are very handy. And especially if you're the man, as a man, you're the one that comes up with, hey, I want to set up that date night once a month or every other week, because man, I sure miss dating you. I mean, how's that not going to melt her heart? Right. Mm-hmm. But also it's seeing your wife, right? It's being able to see your wife. And I say this often. I remember when I changed all that with my wife, and I got to say, it's the small things that matter. Yeah. It's not the big things. It's the small things, like taking her, surprising her at work with her favorite coffee, something like that. And once I started doing that thing, I'm addicted now to how my wife looks at me.
Yes.
I love how because I'm pouring into her, right? Yeah. And I think that's what happens is we get complacent, that we quit pouring into them, right? Instead, what we're doing is we're taking out, because let's be honest, who runs the household most of the time? The wife. She gets the laundry done. She gets the cooking done. She gets the kids, all this stuff. And a lot of men, sometimes we're very selfish, we come home from work from a long day and we're like, I just need to disconnect. I need to take an hour and just disconnect from her. She doesn't get to, and it's simple things like that you realize, hey, you come in and you help your wife. Guess what? 30 minutes, an hour, everything's done. And you guys can disconnect together, but come together, and it's funny. I've seen people who they will be in the same room and they text one another to communicate rather than talk. But it's sad because that's where they've gotten to. Yes. Right. But you don't have to feel stuck, and there's a way out of it. And that's why I love, it's through community. It's through, being vulnerable. It's realizing, seeing the things. I love the fact that the 6 pillars, looking at those, making those healthy, and having a safe place to talk to people about, hey, here's my goals, because a lot of times our goals, we need to share those with other people, because some people will sit there and tell you, well, you're really kind of setting yourself up for failure. How are you going to achieve that? It's not smart, Yeah. And so anyways, but I really appreciate it. I want to ask you one last question. Sure. We're talking today about all this. We got a guy who's listening to this and they're just in this mountain of fog going, man, I really resonate with this, but I don't even know where to start right now. I don't even know where to start. What would you suggest for them, how to get started? Because they may be overwhelmed because all 6 areas are terrible, or maybe 5 out of them, 4 out of them, and they don't know how to, where do I even begin?
That's a great question. I think before even looking at any of your pillars, and you probably have an idea where one or 2 are struggling. I think the first place to start is you need to reach out. I was saying earlier, there's lots of men's work, and men's groups are get more and more popular. They've always existed in some way, shape, or form within church. So look for it in your local church. If you're the type of guy that today that's not a place that you would go to, then go online, find a place and look at Meetup, do different places online to find a men's group where you can start to participate, and just go slow. Just hang out, get a feel for what it's like, get a sense of what they're all about. And then you can start to look at things that are truly critical. And I think the difference, what I appreciate more so from, doing men's work and in a men's group versus taking a traditional therapy perspective, is that with the men's group, you're being surrounded by everybody who's gone through something very similar. They've either gone through it, are in the midst of it, or they know somebody who's gone through it. And so one of the best things that we could ever do for ourselves is to be in mentorship. And I remember somebody said that everybody needs 3 mentors in their life. We need a mentor to mentor us, to take us through that next phase. We need mentors beside us who are on the path with us. That's why being in a community is so important. And we need to have that mentee, that person that we can mentor, to really learn to express the learnings that we've had, the teaching. If they're struggling right now, I would look at finding a community that makes sense for you. Make a few calls. We offer that. I offer a clarity call on my page. It gives you the opportunity to come in and have a look, have a conversation with me. It says half hour. I'll tell you right now, it goes much longer than that. It's not about the time. It's about just sometimes guys just need an opportunity to speak to somebody that has no skin in the game.
Yeah.
So having that conversation can feel sometimes a bit safer to do it one-on-one.
Yep.
And so look for those opportunities to do that. And I'm sure that'll give you that start, at least, to get a sense of where you're at and being able to start making changes in your life.
And for my listeners, one of the things I'll do is I will make sure I get all the links from Alan here that he just discussed and put them in there for you as a tool to utilize for this. And if you find yourself in a situation, you don't have to be stuck. That's a lie of the enemy. God doesn't want you to be stuck. You can find joy, peace, a purpose in life. That God has a purpose for us. Sometimes it gets cloudy. Sometimes maybe not everything's revealed, because sometimes the process of getting there is just as important as getting there, because that is where we learn a lot of things. That's that journey. There's a lot of things along that journey that I'm picking up that's going to help me further on down the road. And so I have to go through some of this. Sometimes it's going to be a little painful. You're going to have to trust somebody. And that for men is really hard, isn't it? But there's a payoff to it, isn't there?
Absolutely. Listen, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. And so take that opportunity now to be in community. The journey is much more exciting, fulfilling when you can go with others, because as we've been talking about all day today, you set that intention to lean into your life, then you'll find that others are in the same place with you. We row together. And so get to join community, get part of something, and watch your life flourish like it hasn't before.
Wow. Well, Alan, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being a guest on here. Great conversation, right where we need to be. And to my listeners, until next time, let's just keep being intentional. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Intentional Guy Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and got some real value out of it. Tell others what you learned and share the podcast if you think they would benefit from it too. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform, leave a review, and consider checking out our website, intentionalguy.org, to learn more about us and get in touch. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.